right, so, but all of that language, you know, starting on line 106 and all the way down to in the 130s is dealing with who can sell these catalytic converters. So that's what I said. We're doing this just like we did coils. And if you go down to like line 129, we're also like the new car dealers were pointed this out, that we also need to make sure that these folks have a copy of a certificate of title or ownership so that you can match that piece with an actual vehicle. And then in section 3, this is all just cleanup language. Like I mentioned on the burial objects, Sean Marie noticed where we're for some reason we had the information different on burial objects, so we wanted to make that consistent. See, before we had to do that, they were stealing burial objects and so forth, and we regulated that only licensed funeral directors and so forth could sell those. And then when you get down to line 186 and 189, what we've done there is before we were requiring a signed sworn affidavit for each one of these transactions. So each transaction, some of these businesses are dealing with 300 and 400 transactions a day, and they were having to notarize each and every one of them, and that was very redundant and very time consuming. So we've worked with them there. We've changed it to a signed statement from the seller. So hopefully that will help. And then down on line 203, this was a law enforcement request that just adds another piece to the information requested, where we're adding the type of and distinctive number from the personal identification card of the seller. So we're requiring we're adding the name and date of birth of the seller and of the deliverer. This just helps law enforcement if they've got a suspect to try to match it all up. Then going into line 214, this is another law enforcement request where we're adding the make, model, and color of the vehicle, which helps them when they're trying to match, a suspect up and they're trying to look at these photos. If they have the make and model of the truck that delivered, they might be able to go out and see if that's the truck in the front yard of who they're worried about. But I want to clarify something here that is a concern to the industry. We want to make sure that this is not asking for the year model of the vehicle, because you could imagine how confusing that could be if they're having to go out and open the door of these trucks and try to decipher a VIN number and figure out the year model. So the make and the model and the color helps law enforcement, but we don't want them to have to figure out the year model, because then if they're wrong, and then they could come back and say, well, why were you wrong there? Not saying that would happen, but just want to make sure. Down in line 230 in that whole section underlined, this is just clarifying that the Title 40 is going to govern the motor vehicle part. When we added catalytic converters, motor vehicle folks are regulated through Title 40. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start regulating through Title 10 through the secondary metals part. Well, then you're going to have a lot of confusion as to, well, where are we regulated? Are we going to be, which database are we using here? Because there was already a database for those. So now this will say that all cars sold for parts or scrap are governed under Title 40, just to clarify that. Then in Section 6, 254, 255, this just simply, I mentioned the database, and the GBI was in charge of administering that. Now that they did choose a third party, which was a big savings to the state than trying to build our own database, we just added GBI or its designee to just make sure that that's understood, that this third party is also responsible for this. And this is also where it clarifies that we're going to make sure this takes place on or after July 1 of 2015, so we do have a for sure effective date for the database portion. The reason why I'm comfortable with pushing this back to July is because we're asking GBI to promulgate some new rules and regs in here than before. So they've told us that they can get that done between now and July 1. And then if you go down, this is section 250 on line 259 to 267. This was basically what we're doing here is working with the recyclers in the fact that See, we're asking them to upload all of this data, and then, and as you know, if you're trying to email photos and all, how much that can, cause a backlog and slow down your system. So we're actually saying, okay, you upload this form one time, and then you upload the electronic signatures, and it just says, hey, if law enforcement needs the rest of that information in that form, it says the actual statements are maintained pursuant to subsection and available for inspection. So that just helps to speed up the process on the technical side. Down on 274 to 278, this is some language that we're trying to work with the utilities, because the utilities were very affected by this, particularly with the amount of thefts that they were dealing with, whether it be Georgia Power or whether it be telecommunications companies. And these type companies, y'all, have their own investigators who are post-certified through the peace officer standards and training. So they can actually get in there and work with law enforcement if they had access to this database. If they were investigating their own theft, and they can access this database and go in and say, well, let's be a partner and work with them on this. So what we've done is we're allowing employees of electric suppliers, as defined in the code they're regulated under, and telecommunications under that code, provided that such employees are post-certified and have successfully completed all that training. So we're going to let them access the database, but we're actually, if you look to the next page, starting on 279 for me, is where we're laying out the fact that we're going to leave it up to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to promulgate all these rules allowing this to happen. So there's still some questions as to, what they can access and so forth. So we're going to let GBI come up with that. We've also got some language in here that just, make sure that any confidential information, trade secrets are kept private. And we're doing that by putting some penalties in here for folks that use this information for anything other than investigation of a metal theft. So this will ensure compliance with all federal and state laws. And so that's it. Like I said, I could sit here and thank a lot of people who have had input on this bill, but and I'm sure there's a lot of these folks that would love to come up and testify today and talk about what they've done, but I feel like I know this issue well enough to answer your questions, but if I do get bogged down a little bit, I'm sure there's some folks back here that would be glad to help me out.
Excuse me. I was going to ask, I know we've got a lot of folks here with us today, and how many are here in support of this legislation? Would y'all just stand real quick if you're supporting this legislation today? Okay, good Lord. All right. Well, I was going to ask for some identification, but we'll skip that part right now. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was going to ask that question. Anybody here opposing this legislation? Anybody against the legislation that we've got before us today? All right. Well, that's good. That's easier to identify. Thank you guys for standing. Huh?
That's basically what I'm saying. I mean, these folks, and particularly the recycling industry, I mean, this thing's basically just tightening down more. These folks brought this to me before the session, and the first thing I said was, well, darn, you're just going to make it harder on yourself, aren't you? They said, yeah, but we're still wanting to be part of this. I mean, there's a lot of people that weighed in on this, and I'll tell you this. It's been great this time because everybody's worked together. Everybody's proud of the success of the prior bill, and we want to make sure that continues. And the fact that everybody's on the same team here in this whole metal theft task force has made my job a lot easier, even though it hadn't been all that easy. But I'll be ready to put this one to bed.
Well, I appreciate your work on it, Representative, and I know you worked hard on that other one. I was involved with you on it and trying to help a little bit on it, but you've done a great job on it, and I appreciate your work and the efforts of everybody in this room that's come together with you. We got questions for this. Anybody have any questions? Seems like you did a outstanding job in explaining this. No questions at all? I know we are working from the right LC. I want to make sure we got that LC 36275 4S, because that's the one before us, and that's the one we'll be voting on. Yes, sir.
Hot off the presses.
Hot off the presses. Number 18.
Representative Shaw commends you on your hard work on this. I know it's a lot of work, and Shaw Marie, thank you. Based on everything I've heard, I'd like to move that we do pass.
All right. Got a move to pass in several seconds. Any discussion at this time? All right, hearing none. What's the favor? All in favor, let me know by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign. All right, thank you very much.
Hey, thank y'all.
Appreciate you being here. Appreciate all you good folks coming up to support this morning. All right. Ms. Carter, are you here? There's my representative. Let me get you over here on that mic.
Yeah, I'd rather stand.
All right. You will, after I saw you sitting in the hall out there yesterday. Somebody made pictures of you doing that.
They did? I haven't seen those pictures yet.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will. The beauty of elected office, right?
Mm-hmm. House Bill 232, and you have an LC. We have a substitute from you also, I believe.
We do. It's LC 362750S.
All right, we have that one in our folders. This is hot off the press also, I understand.
It is.
Okay.
It is. It was a great discussion between a couple of different occupations, and we've come up with a good agreement here, and I'm going to have both of them speak just very briefly about how they have agreed to this bill. So anyway, but I'm going to address it first. The bill addresses some of the basic code revisions designed to improve professional practices to ensure patient safety and align Georgia's statute with other states regarding hearing aid dispensers. So this the State Board of Hearing Aid Dealers and Dispensers is already in place. The bill does three things. In Section 1, it changes up the board a little bit. You'll see down there on lines 23 through 27, one of these board members will be someone who shall be an individual to whom neither this state nor any other state has ever issued a license, permit, certificate, or registration to engage in the practice of dispensing hearing aids, and shall not employ any individual to engage in the practice of dispensing hearing aids. This is someone who works within the area, but is not necessarily competitive with the hearing aid dispensers. This could be someone who works in a school system, the military, a hospital. So there are plenty of folks to choose from for that. Also, in that same section, the chairpersons will be, the chair and the vice chair will be someone who holds the dispenser's license. On Section 2, which is the second part of this, it requires a fingerprint check, a fingerprint record, and also a criminal background check, which is what the hearing aid dispensers were definitely in favor of. And lastly, on Section 3, it requires more continuing education. It goes from 14 hours to 20 hours. That's the majority of the states that do require 20 hours, some as many as 32, but that was something that they thought would be, it would enhance and improve the standard of care for the hearing aid, for the hearing impaired and for consumer protection. So that's the bill in a nutshell. And if you don't mind, I'll bring up one person from both of the areas who are represented here just to let you know how they feel about the bill.
Okay, that'll be good, madam.
Danny, come on up and introduce yourself and tell them where you're from and who you represent.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Danny Jones. I'm from Valdosta. I am a, oh yeah, it's a good place.
Yeah, long way.
Yes, sir. I'm a hearing aid dispenser down in Valdosta. I've been doing this since 1991 and have been able to serve citizens of the great state of Georgia. I'd like to, if you don't mind, thank a few people. I'd like to thank Madam Chair Carter for her work in doing this and bringing this before you. She has done a wonderful job. She has put a lot of work into this, and we appreciate her efforts. I'd also like to thank Sean Marie for her efforts and what she's done. She's been very helpful. Also, Chairman Maxwell, the committee, appreciate y'all looking over this, making sure that it's in the best interest of the citizens of Georgia. That's what we all want. I'd like to thank some of the co-sponsors, Representative Corbett, Maxwell, and Shaw for their input, and also the Georgia audiology community. With their support and their insight, we were able to make this a bill that truly does what it's intended to do, which is to add a higher level of service and protection to the citizens of Georgia. So like I said, we're in support of this, and we appreciate your time and efforts.
Anybody have any questions for Danny? Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you getting them coming up this morning.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Alice Salino. I'm a practicing audiologist from Columbus, and I'm the president-elect of the Georgia Academy of Audiology. I second all the thank yous. I agree. It's been a good process. The Georgia Academy, supports this bill and the revisions that were made to it, and thank you for your support.
Very good, ma'am. Any questions? All right. Have any questions for the author? All right. Chairman Dixon.
What's the term of the license? How frequently do they have to be renewed?
The license has to be renewed every 2 years.
Every 2 years. So it's 20 hours of credit every 2 years.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions from committee members? Anybody else in the audience support or against this piece of legislation? All right. We just got supporters here. All right. Mind of the committee at this time? Got a motion from Chairman Dixon do pass. Do we have a second? Several seconds. All right. Any other questions? Hearing none. All in favor of this piece of legislation, House Bill 232 by substitute. All in favor, let me say an aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. All right, madam.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Representative Harrell, we have another alcohol bill. You're serving Bloody Marys this morning early, right? Oh, alcohol and firecrackers. No, let's don't do that. Let me get you back on down there. All right. Representative, you are good to go, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to Representative Dixon, I promise, I know he's getting tired of seeing me, I promise this will be the last time you'll see me before this committee this year. I do hope to see you at rules, though. This is House Bill 535, and very simply, this is a permissive bill that would allow those jurisdictions, counties and cities that already permit Sunday sales for on-premise consumption, and for example in restaurants, to by local ordinance modify those hours. Today, those hours by state law cannot begin before 12:30 p.m. So House Bill 535 would simply allow them the discretion to move that time frame up to as early as 10:30 a.m. It's titled the Brunch Bill, and so I'm sure all of us at one time or another, whether we're consumers or not, have been at a Sunday morning breakfast brunch and have been there a few minutes before 12:30, and either you or somebody in your party may have had to wait a few minutes, and so this would allow those jurisdictions to choose to move those hours up a little bit. With me this morning, if you don't mind, is Karen Bremer. She's the director of the Georgia Restaurant Association, and I believe she's probably shared some information with you before, but this is a bill that again is permissive but would have an incredible impact in every one of your districts, presuming any of your districts have restaurants. And so if you'd like, she might share a word of the impact within the industry, if you'd permit.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee members. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to this. Everybody should have received this in their office last evening. And to add what Representative Harrell has said, basically we're asking for an even playing field with state institutions. Currently, the Georgia World Congress Center and the Phillips Arena, Lake Lanier Islands have an exception to start serving alcohol at 10:30. And I feel it's important for the restaurateurs that have restaurants located adjacent to those facilities to have the even playing field with state entities. I will use as an example Taco Mac over by the Georgia Dome. Those are the folks, hardworking folks, that are collecting sales tax that pays for that Georgia Dome, and yet they can't compete with the facilities over there. we did a study, and this has a tremendous amount of impact. If we take 25% of roughly 25% of the almost 17,000 restaurants in the state, just an additional $480 on Sundays adds almost $100 million in revenue, which creates jobs, which creates a tremendous tax base for the state. So I graciously request a favorable pass on this legislation.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a couple of questions. Gosh, y'all lighting up the board here. Representative Powell, what's your number down there? You said you had a question?
I didn't have a question. I just want to be recognized for a motion.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let me take, I think number 19 was up first over here.
So let me get this straight, Representative Harrell. Instead of us having to drive to the airport, we're going to be able to do this in a restaurant close by? I mean, you're being so permissive this entire session. I hope the newspaper doesn't pick up on all your permissive bills.
They've noticed one or two already, but, including the Central State Hospital. But Representative Hawkins is correct. Keep in mind, though, with the airport bill, you need to be a ticketed passenger. With this bill, you don't have to spend money for an airline ticket. That's exactly right. Yes, sir.
At 5 o'clock in the morning if you want to drink at 5. Number 18.
Representative Harrell, thank you for bringing this bill. Lines 21 through, I don't know, somewhere down through 30, the impact on farm wineries. Basically what we're doing is we're doing the same thing there. The reason I ask is both Representative Hawkins and I share a county. We have a number of farm wineries. We're really pushing hard on the agritourism and things of this nature. Just pretty much it covers these guys, and based on what I've seen of wineries in other states, it probably puts us in line with them too.
That's correct. There was a separate hourly language, as you see on lines 27, that dealt in the farm winery section of the title. So we have repeated the language there that would address the farm winery. So you're absolutely correct. And that's why it was necessary to put it in the two different sections.
Well, it's one of the things that we're really pushing hard for in Northeast Georgia, and I appreciate your efforts on our behalf.
All right. Thank you, sir. Chairman Dixon.
First of all, Representative Hawkins, I think his next bill is to allow Domino's Pizza deliveries to bring the drinks with it. My only concern is, and I'm fine with the bill. It just, when many of these Sunday sales things were up for votes in various communities, they generally had the hours of operation in those resolutions, and now we're going to allow the local governments to change those hours by ordinance. Do we anticipate any pushback on that issue?
You're correct in that all these communities have already had that referendum, and you're also correct at the time the hours were dictated. Of course, they were dictated by the state. Right. Yeah. And so, each local community will have to make that determination. The bill does anticipate that it will be a vote of the local governing authority and not require an additional referendum. But so your local governing boards will have to take that into consideration, whether or not they feel their community would be accepting, or whether or not they feel that that is not a prudent step for their local community to take.
Would the language allow a local jurisdiction to do it by referendum?
Not with this language, no, sir.
Okay.
But if they decided to on their own, this doesn't require it, but it does not mandate that they not have one. I don't think.
I would agree. To the best of my understanding, that would be true. I mean, it doesn't mandate either. It would be permissive to allow them by local ordinance, but it doesn't in any way prohibit them, if it's otherwise permitted in law, to hold a referendum.
Okay. That's fine.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. I'm not a lawyer.
So I just want to clarify that. Basically what you're saying is it takes it down to, I don't want to say the lowest level of government, but the government closest to the people in the community to make the decision.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? I see none. Chairman Powell, what's your number? Or this bill, House Bill 535, on the pass recommendation. Got a move and second. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign. All right. Committee is through here now. We have a few other bills resting in the bosom of the committee at this time. They will be going into subcommittees, and we will wait and see what the Senate sends over to us. And at the end of next, let's see, Friday the 13th, I believe. So unless something really extraordinary happens, we probably won't be meeting next week. I think we're about through with our legislation. Thank you, committee members. Miss Joyce, God bless you, my child. Thank you, madam. Thank you, committee members.